When injury takes you out of the game, it's time for your team to step up. At Allina Health Orthopedics, you'll get expert care backed by a whole health system of providers. With records, test results, and care team, you are always close to the care you need. Schedule now at allinahealth.org/ortho. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sound of the Loons, presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. And you talk about a major role reversal here. I've been practicing that intro now for like the last half hour just to make sure that I could do it justice, because now I get to say it, and Callum Williams is on the other end getting to listen to me do the intro. So welcome back, Cal. Thanks for joining me today. You and I were just sort of reminiscing on some Minnesota stuff, some Apple stuff, some broadcasting stuff, but now we should probably hit the record button and actually tell people what we're talking about.
Yeah, we should actually start talking about some football, shouldn't we? Because we could have very easily just sat and talked for a few hours there. And I felt really sorry for our expert button presser, Grace Dearson, there, just having to listen to us. So yeah, we should probably get this thing going, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I don't even know how many weeks in we're at now. I mean, I've been trying to like count and keep track of games, and you and I were just saying like, oh, where are you this weekend? And it's like, where am I? What city am I at? What time zone am I in? And it's crazy because I think part of it is wherever we go, we're only there for like 36 hours, but it is a different animal. And not only just the soccer side of it, and not only the on the field stuff, but just the life side of it. You know, you had moved to New York City, you had a brand new little baby girl, which is awesome and phenomenal. And then on top of it, we get this amazing Apple deal and MLS announcement, and we get our schedules and we're like off to the races. So I just want to kind of recap, what has it been like for you thus far through week, whatever we're in, 6?
Is that what it is? Week 6? I can't remember.
I think it's week 6 coming up here.
It's been carnage. Like the whole thing is just, I mean, I don't even know where to begin, to be honest, Kay. I mean, like you said, it was a bit of a life change for me moving over here with my wife, and my wife was very heavily pregnant at the time, and we were very fortunate to welcome in our daughter Lily to the world, and it's been a major life change for sure. But she's as sweet and as cute as can be, and it's been wonderful. But in terms of the whole Apple thing, yeah, I mean it's crazy because we all really had. It's funny the amount of time you and I, when we were working for Minnesota United, the amount of times people asked us, "What's going on? What are you doing? Are you part of it?" We genuinely had no idea. We were not told anything until sort of November, December time, so we didn't know. And it's been it's a startup, right? So it's not without its imperfections, but I think so far as the weeks have gone on, it's become a really top production. From all the things I've seen from other broadcasts and other productions around the whole thing, different shows and different broadcasts and different stadiums and everything, it's been great. I compare it to, and unfairly, I compare it to other productions around the world that also started up, that had a fairly significant budget behind it as well and everything. And I would put it up there alongside a lot of them. If this coverage was presented for just about any other league in the world, I don't think it would look out of place at all. I think it's remarkable. And the exciting thing about it is that it's only going to get better as well. So there's lots more to come. We haven't even, internally, as far as I'm aware, we've not even talked about Leagues Cup and what that looks like and everything. And, all I know is that there is a tremendous group of people behind it who really, really want this to succeed. And I think so far, so good for it.
Yeah. And I think when I was, early on in the first couple of games, I mean, for me, at least, it was like, our job is the light goes on and we call the game. I think some of it was more like technologically, everybody behind the scenes doing the heavy lifting in the trucks, trying to manage the different languages coming out of the same trucks, the transmissions back to the studios, to those fabulous studio shows, what's going to be pushed back to them, what's coming from us at the stadiums, what are we responsible for? And so when we would, after a show, we'd go down to the truck, and I was more like wondering, well, how to go for you guys, because when the light goes on for us, we just call the game. I feel like at that moment we have the easy part once the light goes on, because all our work is done up until that moment. And I don't know what it's been like for you, and you and I both are, somewhat entrenched in the league anyways. It wasn't just like we only watched and talked about Minnesota United when we covered them, but it is a different animal where you're wanting to know everything about two teams every week. Because it's one thing to sort of like have an understanding for the league in general, where teams are sitting in the table, who's looking good, who's been playing well, who scored the game-winning goal last week. It's a different animal to really dive in. And as I always say, to do a team justice when you're calling a game, as an analyst or a play-by-play. And so deep diving into two new teams every week. Sometimes you get the benefit of having the same team a couple weeks already, but in general, two teams every week that you want to make sure that you're doing the justice to, having the right conversations with the right people and the players and the coaches, and watching the tape and everything else. How have you found that so far with the two teams every week?
I think there's an element of responsibility from us as commentators, because, and we always approach this the same anyway, going into a Minnesota United broadcast. There are people watching these two teams. Our job is to essentially know more than they know. And at times that can be challenging, because there are some very passionate fans of their teams. But if we don't, then in my opinion, we're not really doing our job. And it comes down to the details. It comes down to knowing how many goals a certain centre forward has scored against this back line. It comes down to how many times the right back has started this year, or how many saves the goalkeeper has made in a certain situation, or whatever, or the pronunciations, player pronunciations, get the names right, and it takes an awful lot of commitment during the week. People just think, I think a lot of the time, Kay, that we as football commentators, we turn up to the stadium, call the game, and that's it. That's just not that's just not reality, is it? There's an awful lot of prep that goes into these broadcasts from our point of view. I can't even imagine what it's like from a production standpoint of view. And we've been incredibly fortunate to have some extremely talented people behind the scenes that have been able to guide this thing and make it work. I wouldn't even know where to start. So major kudos to those behind the scenes, because without them, this doesn't work. I found it intriguing. I found it very informative. We are extremely fortunate that we get access, for the most part, to the head coaches. If not, it'll be a player or two. And I find that to be quite informative, more so for the analyst and your role, I think. I've been working with a chap called Kalen Carr, who's a former Houston Dynamo and Chicago Fire player, and has done podcasts and documentaries with Major League Soccer for several years now. And if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend going on Apple TV and check out The Movement. He's done some really, really, really good stuff, and he's on the Extra Time podcast as well quite regularly. Commentary is new to him, and I think he's adapted to it tremendously well. But I think from the analytical side, I think that's been tremendously beneficial, being able to talk to the head coaches and just getting little details there that will ultimately make the analysts look good. It will also be a really good way to get their message across as well, which is ultimately a really important thing, is to get the message across. And in my opinion, as broadcasters, our main job is to present information. And if that's coming from the head source, from the head coach, and coming from players, then that is extremely beneficial for people like you and I.
Yeah. And I gleaned so much from those conversations. And even just now, before we jumped on, I was rewatching all of Christian Lattanzio's post-game press conference from Charlotte's last game against the Red Bulls. I want to dive. I will almost handwrite exactly what he's saying, because that's how I remember things, is by writing things down.
Yep.
And I want to know why they did what they did in that moment, and the rosters will change, and these international call-ups, everything that's going on right now in these moments, the rosters and why they played that way. Why did they do this? Why did they have that shift? Why did they make that sub? And those are things I can rewatch games, but sometimes I don't want to speculate on why a coach or a player is doing something. Maybe that's what they've been asked to do, But if I don't
Mm.
know that, then how can I speak to it? So
Right.
I always think I just find out so much information from those things. And I think you and I are both on the same page. And we've always been that way. And even when we were with Minnesota, we always wanted to have the opposing coach or a player on our podcast or a broadcaster, because it made the most sense. We wanted to give, equal justice, due justice to the opposition. It wasn't just a, 98% Minnesota broadcast and a 2%, opposing broadcast. So I think for us, it's probably been a little bit easier transition because we kind of already did that anyways. It's more just making, to your point, there's a responsibility there in doing the broadcast justice, the analytical side of things and the play-by-play side of things, and getting like the backstory on what's happening. So when you did Minnesota this last weekend, I got back to my hotel room in Columbus and turned it on in like the 88th minute or something like that. So I got to see, the sort of attempting to kill off a game by Minnesota United. I think that some of those young players, if they go back and look, they might regret a little bit not doing things differently in the moments on the field where they came on and had their moment to shine, and instead of like going to I think I heard Kalen say it too, going to the corner flag, trying to kill off some time, come away with the points, especially with the players that Minnesota was missing, but then also giving up a late goal. So it almost feels like a loss instead of a draw, especially when you're at home. But what did you make of that Minnesota United team? How did you feel about that match and the players that did get to step up in those moments as substitutes are coming in for the guys that were missing on international duty? And then, as we know, Emmanuel Reynoso still not here, but it's almost like not even worth talking about anymore because they've been able to just move on essentially without him at this point. Because what else do you do? And I think they've done really well up until that point.
Yeah, so a few things here. I think number one, first and foremost, whatever the situation is with Emmanuel Reynoso, and you and I have probably heard the same sort of speculation, which tends to sort of make its rounds around the MLS broadcasting world. I just hope he's okay. I just hope he's okay from a personal point of view. This doesn't even, I don't even think about this from a professional point of view now because something's not right, and I just hope he's okay. And I would be surprised if he came back to Minnesota United. I have no inside information or anything. I just it just seems as though his mind is potentially elsewhere right now, and I just hope he's okay. But we spoke to Will Trapp about it. I was fortunate enough, myself and Kaylin took a very early flight from New York City on Friday morning to get to training up at Blaine, and spoke to Will Trapp briefly. Came over to say hello, and he was sort of saying that the team have essentially moved on. And what it's actually done is it's made them, not necessarily made them more of a unit, but they've had to figure out a way to play without Reynoso. And it may very well have made them a little more organized. It may very well have forced their hands a little bit to play a certain way and to play as a team. And I'm not suggesting that they weren't playing as a team in the past, but there was a good sort of 70-75% of everything that went through Emmanuel Reynoso when he was on the field for Minnesota. Obviously, now that's not the case. So they've had to figure out certain ways around it, and they've had to figure out different ways of playing. And I actually think it's not been as detrimental to them as many would have assumed, actually. But look, of course, they're going to miss somebody like Reynoso. For me, he was top 3, number 10 in Major League Soccer. So, of course, you're going to miss somebody like that. I thought the fact that Major League Soccer played this weekend, I thought was questionable. I think we're all in agreement there. There were 90 players away on international duty this weekend, and I thought we'd gone past this. I thought we weren't playing through international breaks anymore. I understand the counter argument of the League's Cup is going to take a month up of the season, but in my opinion, there are plenty of Wednesdays available. So I don't know if the league are trying to avoid that or something. I have no idea. But also the counter argument as well there is that what this provided was a stage for MLS Next Pro. Because I know in your game, you had several players score their first goals in Major League Soccer and on their debuts and what have you. And in Minnesota, we had several players coming from MLS Next Pro and did awfully well. So it was a good advertisement for those players for sure, and what MLS Next Pro is and what it's becoming. And that's important as well. But I thought it was obviously not a prime example of what Minnesota United are going to be this year. There were obviously 8 international players away, 7 of which started against Colorado the week prior. And I thought Minnesota still had a decent team. Like the 11 they put out there was actually still not a bad team whatsoever, and very nearly got the 3 points up until legitimately the last kick of the game. But it seemed a little more rigid. It seemed a little limited compared to what it would have been had they have had the players that they usually have available to them. But there were some good players. I thought Cameron Dunbar gave a good example of himself. I think we'll see more of him amongst the MLS team this year. I thought Franco Fragapane showed an element of seniority, as did Brent Coleman. I thought he deputised extremely well, as he always tends to do. I'll be honest, I thought Clint Owen was fine, but in my opinion, he looked like a goalkeeper that hadn't played a lot of minutes over the last couple of years. And that's just down to him not being sharp. He's a really good goalkeeper, was operating at a very high level with Colorado and Toronto for many a year. I can't believe he's gone in as a number 2. I still think he's a number 1 goalkeeper somewhere, but shows how much he thinks of the club and the opportunity. But I thought he didn't look 100%, and that's because he is a second choice goalkeeper right now, and he's going to have to figure out how to manage that for sure. But I honestly thought it was a decent performance. Mendy Garcia took his goal very well. I think that's going to present a question mark in a positive light to Adrian Heath moving forward, because the goal he scored, Kay, I thought was very, very reminiscent of an actual centre forward. And to my knowledge, he's more comfortable in the wide areas. So, as I say, I think from a positive point of view, that's going to give Adrian Heath a head-scratching moment, because he should be starting. I thought he did quite well. But as I say, I thought Minnesota sort of reverted back to their old ways in some senses. I know they changed to a 4-4-2, which is nothing new to them because they've defended in a 4-4-2 for years. But Vancouver played really, really narrow, and everything came through the centre of midfield. Alessandro Schupf, whenever he got on the ball, it was always through the centre of midfield. Sebastian Berhalter was pinging the balls into the wide areas when he could, but even when they were pinged into the wide areas, the players would always bring it back inside. And so I thought Minnesota took advantage of that when they recognised that, and the fullbacks got forward, in particular Valentin, who crossed for the goal for Garcia. And I thought he did really well, but it was obvious after about 20, 25 minutes, it was obvious that Vancouver were playing a narrow game, and they played the Christmas tree formation. And I think eventually the message was to get the ball into the wide areas. But, Zanik Valentin is 31, 32 years of age now. It's a tough ask for him to get up and down. But I thought he did really well. And it was a good performance, but ultimately, I thought it was a fair result, to be honest, Kay, because Vancouver had several chances. Brian White could have conceivably scored a hat-trick. He had several opportunities, hit the crossbar in the opening minutes. So I thought a draw was a fair result. And I'm not sure many would disagree with that. I think where the fingers will be pointed will be towards the officials, because I don't know where 6 minutes came from. And also as well, during the course of those 6 minutes, our producer got in our ear and said, we're actually been told there's going to be a further minute added on here. And I don't know where that came from, but I think that's where the fingers will be pointed more than anything, is the officials rather than the Minnesota United individuals on the field.
Yeah. And I, watching the end of the game, and I understand the frustration in that moment. And I'm sure after they were able to take a deep breath, I'm sure all of the players and the coaching staff are able to sort of take a collective, sigh and regroup and say, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, we have to find a way to get the result, especially at home. And, you're understanding and you're missing a lot of players in that moment. And at that exact time, how many times have we called games and you're watching the clock tick off and you're like, what in the world, especially when there hasn't been any additional substitutions, injuries, things that would cause more time added to the clock. And then, the officials just giving a written statement that it was at least 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And then, or whatever it was, Yeah. And I know they have their own evaluations and meetings and things like that. The officials do, but in the moment, that doesn't make you feel any better about it, knowing that, the ref might get a slap on the wrist after the fact when it's results in real points and it's early in the season, but those points can come back to bite you in the end. So I think, how did it feel to see Hassani Dotson back out there? And I know he might be a little frustrated and disappointed because he didn't get to be out there with the full starting group complement. You're playing a different style of play. You go in with the mindset that you want to get the win at home, but you also know that those aren't the normal guys that are going to be around him all the time. But how did it feel to see him back out there?
Yeah, it was great, because let's not forget, you and I were at the training session where he did his ACL, and we heard the groans and the screams and the not so pleasant moment when it occurred. And he said to us, actually, as we were talking earlier on about this player availability, he was one of the players that spoke to us on Thursday afternoon, and he said to us that he's around about 90 to 95% comfortable now, because I guess, I mean, I have had knee injuries in the past, but nothing like that. And speaking to players that have had that injury, they said that it does take time when you plant your foot and when your cleats can potentially get caught, and you get it takes time to get comfortable with turning and trusting your body and trusting your mindset and everything. And so Sonny Dotson said he was about 90 to 95% comfortable, but it's taken him time to get comfortable for sure. So he was fine. You know, I don't think he was as abrasive as I've seen him in the past. But as I say, I don't know if that was because the obvious thing that Minnesota did was moving the ball into the wide areas. I don't know if he was told to sit not as deep as Will Trapp, but sit a little deeper. There were times when he would move forward in transition, and very much was to Hassani Dotson that we've all know to come and love. But he was fine, and it was just really good to see him out there. And I hope the recovery has gone the way that he wanted it to. I hope to see him continue to grow. And there was one time actually I wondered this, okay, when we were mid-match, and Hassani Dotson got the better of Julian Gressel several times, and I thought to myself, Julian Gressel's just made his debut for the national team in the January camp. I think he got 2 caps. I'm not suggesting that Hassani should be thrust into the roster straight away, but I kind of thought to myself, I hope that he gets back to the level that he was, because at that level, Hassani Dotson, I thought to myself, he's certainly worth a look for the national team. And again, I'm not suggesting he should be starting over Tyler Adams or Weston McKennie or anything like that, but he's certainly worth a look, in my opinion. So I hope he gets back to the trajectory where he was before the injury.
And I want to ask you real quick, because you know, I think that we're familiar and so familiar with the Western Conference. You just did 2 Western Conference teams, but also both of us have had a slew of Eastern Conference games thus far this season. What's been the most surprising for you, positive or negative? I mean, everyone's talking about St. Louis, right, as an expansion side. That's an easy shout. Maybe Sporting Kansas City and the way they looked the last game, and they're just not what I thought they would be the way they ended last season with the group that they had, especially from a defensive standpoint. I mean, Peter Vermees has to be pulling his hair out. And then also in the Eastern Conference, you had a slew of Eastern Conference games. Who do people listening to this podcast need to pay attention to in the East as well?
Well, the obvious one that people need to pay attention to now would be the Revs, and I don't say that because I've got a plethora of their games coming up. They are top of the Eastern Conference for a reason, and I don't think anybody expected them to be towards the top. I think many expected them to return towards the playoff picture. And here we are talking playoffs, and we're 5 or 6 games in. But I think it's been a surprise, considering the players that they've played, the players that they haven't played as well. Vrioni has hardly seen the field. Altidor's hardly had a sniff. Carlos Gil has been injured and missed several games. The main threat for the Revs has been in the wide areas through the fullbacks. Brandon Bai, a former Minneapolis City player, and Dewan Jones, who was another player that made his national team debut in that January camp. So, you know, I would say those 2 have been the real threats for sure, and those would be ones I would pay particular attention to as well. Cincinnati as well. I think everybody thought they would be good again this year, but I've got Revs Cincinnati in a couple of weeks, Kate, and I think that's going to be a top of the East clash, and I'm really excited about that one because Brandon Vasquez for me is top draw, and we all know what Luciano Acosta can do. Barreal has caused problems as well, but it's very obvious to say the sort of the top 3 in the East now, because you know Atlanta, as you have seen, have seemed to have rediscovered what they were in the past, and that's, I'm assuming, a bit easier when you've got a World Cup winner. Well, sure,
the Columbus
absolutely.
Game. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. You're missing really 2 starters in Thiago Almada and Miles Robinson. They should never put a performance out like that. That was like
No.
abysmal. I know they were missing 7 or 8 guys like on the roster, but guys that actually had played a lot, I would be pretty disappointed in myself if I was Atlanta United. But I do think when they are on form, which we saw, we have seen, and you have Thiago in there, it makes a difference. But I think the East is going to be feisty right down to the end.
East is insane right now, and I did Miami a couple of weeks ago at New York City, and I think they've improved drastically. I'm still not again convinced they're going to be a top 3 seed or anything, but I would fancy them to cause a few upsets. Joseph Martinez, once he gets a little sharper, I think is going to cause some problems again. And New York City FC as well, Kay. I mean, they've got some bodies in that they desperately needed. Santiago Rodriguez is such an eloquent, delightful little footballer that creates things out of nothing. Pereira cutting in from the right-hand side, Pellegrini from the left. The thing that New York City FC need is a centre forwards, because the 2 players behind that attacking unit, Parks and Sands, I would argue have been up there with some of the best central midfielders in Major League Soccer so far. So once they get the centre forward figured out, suggestions are they're going to do that here fairly soon. I think New York City FC once again could be a team to watch, and I'm just naming the whole Eastern Conference here, but the previous and prior to that I'd mentioned, I think are worth a watch for sure. The New England Revolution and FC Cincinnati.
Yeah, and I think, just a quick shout on the Western Conference, because clearly Minnesota, I think, currently sitting in the 4th position, coming off that draw. I think Colorado has probably been immensely disappointing, and I think if you asked Robin Fraser, he'd say the same for what they've accomplished or not accomplished so far now in his couple years in. Seattle flying without their main guys, Jordan Morris getting 4 goals. LAFC just kind of still doing their thing. I'll be curious to see if they can keep this up for the whole season. I mean, talent wise, it looks like they should. But Austin's been a little bit up and down. I don't know. I just think that that is the beauty of this league, is the parity in it. And you and I have said that since day one. I mean, 6 years ago, when we were thrown into the Minnesota United job. Now it's year 7 since we've been around. This league is built on parity, and the talent keeps getting better, but the parity still exists. Some of that's roster structures, salary structures, and some of it is just the quality in this league, whether it's internationals, whether it's younger players coming up through academies and MLS Next Pro, whether it's MLS veterans. I just think it's such an insane combination that this season and this league has been built on. That's why it makes it so fun. You can literally go into every game and not know what you're going to get. Like, I had no clue that was going to be the result with Columbus Atlanta. Even with Atlanta missing who they were missing, Columbus starting guys, and Superman getting a couple goals, in his return to MLS for Columbus Crew. So I think that's why you play the games. And it sounds like we're mocking that statement, but it is really true. That is why you play the games.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is right, Kerry. I don't think there's been a back-to-back winner in Major League Soccer since 2011, 2012. I can't remember. I know there was that period where the Sounders and Toronto had finals.
They were in the final. Yeah, I think they were in the final, but then they didn't win it or something like that. Yeah. I think you're right.
So and that sort of, in my opinion, tells its own story, really, and back to your point with regards to parity. But in terms of Minnesota, though, okay, I mean, I think they're fine. I really do. They're still undefeated. I know next week's going to be very difficult for them in St. Louis. But
can they be the spoiler? They'll make headlines. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's maybe, but I mean, I'm interested to see what the approach is, because St. Louis are so high press. They really
don't
really
pass the ball to the center forward.
To Joao Klaus, yeah, that'll help for sure. But
that's the answer.
Yeah, that's going to be a really tough test. But honestly, I think Minnesota will be fine, especially when they get all the international players back again. I would see them where they have been the last couple of years, just outside the top 4. If they get to the top 4, amazing. But they're a playoff team, and I still think they could probably do with a centre forward. But maybe Mender Garcia is that now. I don't know. It's still early days, but I thought Tapias looked really really good, a cut above. But honestly, I think they're fine with what they have, and. Again, I can see them being a playoff team for sure.
I think so too. I mean, I know when I saw the Minnesota United game that I did, and again, that wasn't necessarily a true representative in the sense that there was snow on the field and things, but
Right.
dealing with the high press of the Red Bulls in that game. And I think it took Tapias maybe a minute to just realize like you're not gonna be able to play out of the back with the ball at your feet. There's snow on the ground. Like, so just being more cognizant. I mean, the Red Bulls came out hot in that game and it probably could have been 2-0 early, just the way it was like, whoa. But I think the depth on this Minnesota squad is probably something that they haven't had in a while. And that's not a knock at anybody else who's ever been on this roster. It's just like when you look at that midfield and the choices that you have, and that the fact that like if Adrian, depending on how he wants to play, you could put Robin out there, you could put Bongi out there, you know what I mean? And then you Mender in a front three with Luis. He even said when he wasn't sure what the deal was with Robin and different things that Amaria could drop almost as a 10 or a false 9 like underneath.
Right.
So and then you look, you got Curvin, you got Will, you've got Robin who can play centrally, you got Fragapane who could tuck in if you needed to, you got Rosales, you got I mean that I just think that they are really solid. Even if someone were to go down with an injury, and even on the back line, and I don't know what DeBassi's timeline is now, but with the 4 they have in the back and Boxall returning and Brent is always an option. I just think they have all good choices right now. So I think they got to feel really good about it going forward. I know we're only 5 whatever games in, but I think they got to feel good about it. So
yeah, for sure. The fact that we just mentioned Clint Irwin as a second choice goalkeeper,
yeah,
for me, I can't believe he's a second choice goalkeeper. He should be starting somewhere. But yeah, they are good. The fact that they missed so many players this week and still put out the team that they did, that they're going to be fine. That they are a playoff team, in my opinion.
So I won't ask you who you're going to pick to win the whole thing since we're only in week 5, only in week 5. But if you had to say, to people to kind of give your parting thoughts on what excites you about this league in this moment. And you and I have talked for years now on the growth of this league from the day that we stepped foot and you were with Sporting Kansas City before you came to Minnesota United and where it's at now, Leagues Cup this summer. We just have been watching CONCACAF Nations League and Euros and all this stuff and players that want to come here and then go elsewhere. It's not this retirement thing anymore. But if Messi wanted to retire, I'd be okay with that. What do you say about this? And tell me this, if on all your player calls, and I'm sure you've done a lot of player calls and coaches calls with players that are internationals. Yes. The one thing that has been resounding is that their families can watch these games. These games are accessible. This league is growing. There's nothing better than this league growing. That is a huge piece of why MLS did this Apple deal. So what's your overarching thoughts on this league and where it's at?
I think the most exciting thing about this, Kay, is that now it is just a part of the generic global footballing conversation. That wasn't the case, arguably 5 or 6 years ago. I think now it is a league that deserves a tremendous amount of credit to where it is from where it's come from, and I think that the one thing which it was probably in need of was a broadcast deal that resembles the one that we have now. The whole local TV thing was great, and I understood the need for it and growing fan base, and I get that for sure. But I still think we're going to get an element of local with the local radio crews and around the league, and also now with the amount of content that's been produced by the local video crews that work for the teams and producing things for Apple TV. I don't think we're going to miss that too much. But what it needed was to I think reach its potential. What was a deal like this, and a deal that can show off the league, that can show what it's about to the world. And I think this happens everywhere, as far as I'm aware, in most, if not all, other football leagues across the world. This format, it's a very IMG Premier League Productions format, but this is how it's done everywhere else, with world feeds and neutral commentators. This is how it is. So again, I think it's just another humongous step in the right direction for Major League Soccer, and we're only whatever it is 5 or 6 games into this whole thing. I'm very excited to see where the league is in a couple of years, but I'm very excited to see where this whole Apple TV deal is in a couple of years as well, because I think it's game changing for Major League Soccer. I really do.
Yeah. And I think even, I was just thinking about this with the MLS Next Pro, that you go on the schedule and all those games are right there. I mean, you talk about
Yeah.
accessibility and ease of accessibility to see some of these young players that this league has worked very hard, and clubs have worked very hard to, to elevate and include and be a part of the fabric of the first team. And that pathway is a little bit clearer. And so the excitement, I know I've talked to Mark Watson several times and Manny Lagos and Cameron Knowles about that pathway and what that means for these players. And so I think just that having that as well available on Apple and easily accessible, it just continues that same theme, that same vein of it is really the world's game, and you want to make it accessible to everybody. And that doesn't just mean getting on the pitch, it means to view it. And I think that that's been one of the overarching themes, and we're only a handful of weeks in, but I think it is going to continue to elevate, continue to get better. And the platform is growing, and I'm super excited about it. And I love catching up with you. I know we talked for like a half hour before we actually started recording, poor Grace, but yeah, hopefully we'll do this again. I just want to, we can get this on the schedule, because it's not like we're going to just sit here and talk about Minnesota United. We can talk about the whole league and break it all down and chat and just visit on what is important in the league and important in family and life, and throw in some Minnesota United stuff in there too.
Yes, absolutely. Would love to. Look forward to doing this again. Where are you this weekend?
That's a great question. I'm at Toronto, Charlotte. Two teams,
Charlotte,
which
okay.
I haven't done yet this year. So deep diving into that right now. And so I'm excited because Charlotte's off to a little bit of a shaky start. And it's funny because when you're studying another team, you inherently watch a team. Like I watched Atlanta beat Charlotte because I was prepping for Atlanta. And so I kind of got to see that vibe, and then they're coming off a game against the Red Bulls. And so it's weird because if you're just watching all the games or the game that's coming up next for you, inherently are seeing probably another team that you're going to do at some point. And you said you're at New England again this weekend?
New England against New York City FC. And I'm extremely fortuitous because I've done both teams. So, but I mean, the prep won't change anyway. The prep's still going to be the same. It's just, I'll just be a bit more, players will be a bit more recognizable, I'm sure. So looking forward to seeing Carlos Gil again if he plays, and Santiago Rodriguez for New York City. They are game changers. I'm looking forward to seeing that for sure.
Well, I think some of it is too, is just, now that you've seen a few of their games, so you've seen the tendencies, or like you've seen a bad day and a good day. Like, if you just go back and watch one game, you're getting a snapshot. You have to see more of teams to feel like this is what they've been working towards. This is what they didn't do well in game one, but they did do it well in game two. And you can see like a progression when you do end up getting a team multiple times. I think that's the other piece of it. I just feel like with Atlanta, I've done it 3 times. And I know that actually the Minnesota United fans absolutely despise the fact that I've done 3 Atlanta games. I've heard from several people now, but I don't get to pick that. But that, I feel like I'm a little more immersed in what they're trying to do, and talking to Gonzalo Pineda every week, like just what he gives you, you just feel like I'm a little more in tune with it, So.
Yeah, for sure. And what I've noticed as well is the clubs have been extremely welcoming as well. Like in Cincinnati, New England, New York City, and Minnesota United, every single time now, people have been very, very welcoming. There's been gifts in the booth. There's been invitations to go down into like the field club to have a drink afterwards, and just looking after us. And we don't need all of this, but of course it's very nice. But it's been really good. And also the other thing as well, Kay, which has been really magnificent, has been getting dinner and getting to know the people on the production side, but also the Spanish and the French commentary crews as well. Just in Minnesota for me last week, Friday night, we went down to a restaurant called the Butcher's Tail down in Laurel Village, my old stomping ground, and it was lovely to just talk about MLS for hours and have a glass of wine or two, have a good meal, and just talk stories of we mentioned like Chivas USA, Cotoma Blanco, the stadium in Carson, the Galaxy, and just all these experiences that people have had over years and years and years of covering Major League Soccer. It's just become evident to me over the last couple of weeks that people just love this league, and having moments like that, it creates unity, it creates culture, and we absolutely need that. All sort of being in this together and trying to play our part in growing the league now, not only domestically but across the world as well. And so it's been great. It's been absolutely sensational, and looking forward to to do in the rest of the season. Looking for the Leagues Cup as well. Can't wait for the Leagues Cup. That's going to be awesome.
That's going to be a whole nother animal, a great animal, but a whole nother animal. So, well, thanks, Cal, for joining me. Again, everybody, another Sound of the Loons podcast presented by Allina Health Orthopedics. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.